Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals to state senators to mayors to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out NewDealLeaders.org to see what I'm talking about.
Hello, and Honorable Profession listeners. This is Rachel, the producer of the show, and today we're bringing you another special bonus episode. Our bonus content this month features host and New Deal CEO Debbie Cox Bultan in conversation with New Deal leaders from across the country as they discuss all things elections. We're looking closely at swing states in the presidential race, as well as states with key state legislative races, ballot initiatives, and more. Today, Debbie catches up with NewDEAler and Chair of the Chester County, Pennsylvania Board of Commissioners, Josh Maxwell. Josh gives us an on-the-ground update of the country's most pivotal swing state, outlining strategies from the Harris-Walz campaign to reach rural voters and the omnipresence of Donald Trump's antics in the local media. Most importantly, Josh talks about his role as the county's head elections officials, how he's supporting poll workers ahead of Election Day, and some of the challenges that voters are facing as they begin to fill out their ballots. Josh gives us a great look at how elections are unfolding at the epicenter of the presidential race. Enjoy and tune in again next week for another special bonus episode.
Josh Maxwell, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Howdy.
It's so nice to see you. Thank you for taking some time out of what is a very busy time for you right now to talk to us during this bonus series we're doing on what's happening in key states election-wise around the country. You, my friend, are sitting in the state. All eyes on, all roads lead to ground zero, whatever we want to call it, of Pennsylvania. How do you feel like things are going on the ground for Democrats in particular? What's the enthusiasm like? How are people feeling?
It's so tough to tell. The Republicans definitely have a ground game. There's likely more Trump signs up in my town that will likely vote Democrat than Harris signs. The campaign is, I'm west of Philadelphia in the suburbs, and we're starting to see some activity from the Democratic side of the aisle. Elizabeth Warren was here 2 weeks ago. Kathy Hochul from New York was here on Sunday. My hope is, as well as people in Wisconsin and Michigan and Georgia and Arizona, is we get the appropriate amount of attention to get out the vote here, because it's going to be very close. It's going to be very close. Very
close. You are in Chester County, as you were mentioning. What are you hearing from your constituents on kind of the day-to-day in terms of what is on their mind? What are they most thinking about?
Most folks here are concerned about process because of so much attention from the former president on mail-in balloting, and mail-in balloting only being in existence here for like 4 years. There's a lot of conversation about drop boxes, paid for postage. It seems to be less focused on getting out the vote or persuasion targeting, and more focused on how to encourage or discourage voting. So in some counties in Pennsylvania, there aren't any drop boxes at all, which hurts rural areas a tremendous amount, specifically Trump voting counties. And then there are places like Delaware County that have 47 drop boxes, the most in Pennsylvania, and they're probably the fourth largest county. So you see very different election process throughout the county, throughout the Commonwealth, depending on the political mood of that county. And that seems to be where all the litigation is. Lawyers come to all the Board of Elections meetings. Lawyers meet with our county staff once a week from the Republican Democratic Party, pretty much to argue ad nauseum about designated agent forms and what they should say, I think folks realize this is going to come down to a few hundred votes spread across 67 counties. So everyone's really focused on the details.
Yeah, that's so wild. So I just want to make sure our listeners know that in your capacity as chair of the Board of Commissioners, where you are actually in charge of elections in your county. So tell me what else besides that, like what does that look like? What does that entail for you besides the litigation piece? And how are you feeling going into the election in your county specifically in terms of preparedness, and what are you worried about?
I'm not worried about too much. So I'm chair of the Board of Elections and our Board of Commissioners, and we're board of 3 for each, and each major political party is represented on both of those. So there's consistently active discussions on the different rules we have in place. Our drop boxes are at libraries. It'll be a 2-to-1 vote. It's usually a 2-to-1 vote on whether they exist at all or not. We've tried to do a good job in Chester County of figuratively speaking, hugging our staff a lot, realizing that these people are under an incredible amount of pressure. They're middle-class folks working a good government job and didn't really sign up to get yelled at or be called names or be harassed and things like that. So we've spent a lot of time just praising our staff, having lunch with them, getting to know them, hoisting them up, and just giving some respect to the job, and also empowering them with more resources. When we started 4 years ago, the first election, we had 13 election staff in this county. Now we're 47 full-time staff through this election. We want, when you're in Southern California looking at your news station of choice, CNN, MSNBC, or another one, we want Chester County to turn a color as quickly as possible and not have people waiting for a week and then texting me to figure out, when the military ballots are going to get counted. So I think going through this 4 years ago and knowing how much national and international press are going to be focused on 5 states and ours, we're trying to be prepared for the onslaught of media attention we're going to get and make sure we come out from a government standpoint looking pretty good, and from a political standpoint don't look like we weren't prepared for the fact that Donald Trump could become elected president.
Yeah. Do you feel like your staff, it's so great you're doing that for your staff and taking that on as a board. Do you feel like are they getting some of those threats and stuff? Is this more kind of preemptively knowing what can happen, or are they and of course they feel the pressure, but are they getting harassed at this point, or just more worried about what might come?
They've been harassed in the past, and some active folks who really believe in Donald Trump's rhetoric have been aggressive in meetings with them, to the point where we had to limit the time that they spent with those folks, still giving an opportunity to express their thoughts and opinions, ask for independent audits from non-government organizations of our machines and our equipment and our staff. So I think we've just gotten better in protecting them and insulating them from that, while also doing everything you can to make sure all candidates and political parties have the ability to provide input into, whether the designated agent form is front and back or just front, and and how many different languages it gets printed in. So they do get, and we have people coming from out of state, many different states, to observe the election on election night, and as they process all these ballots. So we've tried to make this space for those observers better for the observers, but also safer for the staff, and not feel like someone's literally looking over their shoulders, which was the case 4 years ago. So it's getting a little better.
That's interesting. What do you think? What do you think is going to drive turnout? Like, what do people care the most about right now? What's on their mind? What are they responding to in terms of kind of the messages or the policy areas, you think?
I feel that Donald Trump is driving the messaging in Pennsylvania, and perhaps other folks in other areas feel the same way. It's a response to what he does mostly, because he dominates just getting so much attention for anything he says, whether it's not tipping hospitality workers, not taxing the tips of hospitality workers, or some other initiative he has. And because we flip candidates, people start getting to know the vice president and what state she's from. And they know everything about the other guy. So I think there's still a push here. It's a truncated campaign for Kamala Harris, but to the voter, it still feels like April with her, and they're still trying to get to know her and really what her focus is going to be. And my hope is this is increase attention on the kind of things she's going to support here, so people have something to compare Donald Trump to.
Yeah. You guys also have a really important legislative elections going on. The Democrats are trying to hold on to a very narrow majority in the House. Any predictions, thoughts on kind of how that you think is shaping up?
There's a pickup opportunity here in the Kennett Square area, the mushroom capital of the world, that could go one way. But at least where we are, we have a lot of new Democrats here because this is a Republican stronghold for 200 years. So all the Democrats here, mostly women, are just in their first few years, and they're not really being challenged with any money. And I expect that's the case in Southeast PA. When Donald Trump got elected, folks had an emphasis on electing women to office. Like 70% of our elected officials are women here in Chester County. Entire school boards are women. But most of our state legislators, state senators, our U.S. congressperson, all Democratic women. And I think it's going to stay that way in Southeast PA. All four suburban counties are represented by women in Congress. And I guess I'm tossing Susan Wild in there from the Lehigh Valley, but I don't, it's so close that it could change either way. But in the suburbs of Philadelphia, it's probably not going to. The fights tend to be more in the primaries in Philadelphia, to some degree, the suburbs. And then the rural part of the Commonwealth is mostly consistently Republican.
Yeah. So it feels like that's where the Harris Walz campaign, to go back to them for a second, is trying to cut into those margins, right? Or I saw something today about kind of, even if they're going to lose in rural areas, losing by less, right? What's your sense of like the strategy and who they're talking to on the ground and how that's going around the state?
It's speculative on my part, but I think they had a meeting with Josh Shapiro, and he said, go everywhere. Because there are Democrats who voted for Donald Trump because the Democratic Party has ignored them for a very long time in rural America. And we have done a good job as a party speaking to those populations of cities that are losing population or the industries are moving. And we've kind of made them an afterthought and sometimes a joke. In the case of Scranton, a TV show was made about people there, and some people might view that favorably from Scranton. Some people might think they're being poked at. So Josh Shapiro proved that you can go to those places and get votes. And it looks like the Harris campaign is going to counties that typical Democrat presidential campaign wouldn't go to. And I think that's a different model than Hillary Clinton used, where she was in North Carolina the night before the election. And I would expect Kamala Harris to be in one of the 5 big swing states, and realizing that you need Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and if you can snare Georgia or Arizona, you're in really good shape. So there's people there that need to be talked to, and Donald Trump's going to turn out all 48% of the voters that are going to vote for him nationally, and Kamala Harris needs to make sure she gets her 2% that she needs to win.
Yeah. What do you expect what are you watching down the stretch? Are you watching the polls? Do you think the polls mean anything right now? Are you just listening to people? What's your advice for people outside Pennsylvania to kind of, as we're watching Pennsylvania, what should we be looking at?
I don't know how much polling matters, just because they've been wrong on Donald Trump so often, or just been wrong more on Donald Trump than maybe other candidates. And I think his political prowess needs to be respected. A man who's never run for office before has gotten elected president, but he's also never gotten 50% of the vote. So this is an opportunity for Democrats to get the first Black woman ever elected to office, but we've also never gotten a Black woman elected to office. So it's an opportunity and a huge hill to climb. So I think, to the degree folks from across the country can contact voters and turn them out, get more people who are just moved to Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Michigan or any other swing states, call them. Let's get them registered to vote. If they haven't changed it yet, they're still unloading the U-Haul, and they lived in New York City before, let's get them a voter registration change form, and let's get them to the polls. It's going to be very, very close. And I think that's important. We have a lot of, my in-laws have a house in Philadelphia, and they have people coming in from California for 3 weeks just to go outdoors and make sure that every voter gets out in the Philadelphia area. But also the minority populations. I would say one variable here that people I don't think have considered yet is large Indian population and Asian population in our area, Southeast PA, that work in finance or fintech or in biomedical vanguards here. And for the first time, we're seeing a tremendous amount of those people at Democratic events that maybe weren't interested before or busy with their lives and kids. But there's going to be a large turnout. She's going to lose a lot of white working class Joe Biden voters, I think. But she's going to pick up a lot of Asian voters. And I teach in an HBCU. The kids couldn't care less about the election previously. But now all they want to talk about is Kamala Harris. They're watching their debates for the first time. They're tracking every single statement she makes. They're listening to Howard Stern. They didn't know who Howard Stern was a week ago, just to hear Kamala Harris. And it's cool to watch those kids wake up for the first time. Not wake up for the first time, but I mean like turn on for the first time to a presidential election the way some of us remember the first person we voted for, the first person that got interested in government. For them, it's Kamala Harris. So it's like, oh, I remember that in 2008. That look in my eye. I was like, I remember that twinkle.
Well, that's exciting. I like that. That's a good sign that people are getting excited. New voters. Well, thanks so much, Josh, for spending some time with us. It's so important to kind of, what's happening in Pennsylvania and so your other fellow swing states around the country. So we appreciate you being with us.
All right, go Phillies.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. Thanks to the team at NewDEAL for producing this episode. We encourage you to bring honor to public service, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars are used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,